I legitimately have no idea how to begin this video. I mean, Adventure Time's last episode aired. It's the end of an era. I have no jokes. I cried during Time Adventure, and the last song, and the whole episode, and also every moment of my life. Spoilers, by the way, in case you haven't picked up on that yet. Though it wouldn't be the Adventure Time way if it didn't go out leaving us with a few questions to mull over, namely through the characters of Shermy and Beth, who discover the Finn sword at the end of the last episode, symbolically taking up the mantle of the new adventurers of Ooh. But a lot of people have taken this to mean something a little different than what we saw. And it's an idea that also fits nicely with the theme song's lyrics of "The fun will never end." Could this be because Finn and Jake's souls are always destined to be adventuring even after death? I'm Jacob with Channel Frederator, and today we're going to be discussing, could Beth and Shermy in fact be reincarnations of Jake the dog and Finn the human? Quick disclaimer, while Adventure Time is a Frederator property, the views expressed in this video are just mine, so don't take anything I say as gospel towards anything you think was left ambiguous by the series finale. I'm just here to start a conversation. With this in mind, it's worth mentioning that Beth and Shermy being reincarnations of Finn and Jake was heavily implied, but it wasn't 100% confirmed. Although reincarnations as a concept has already been confirmed as a regular occurrence in Ooh, we've been presented with many of Finn's past lives and the waves of change each of them brought. Not to mention the elementals as well. But viewers were able to come to this conclusion through Beth and Shermy's designs, their behavior, and even their manner of speaking. Beth's similarities to Jake are pretty self-explanatory, but let's take a look at Shermy. Some things that made viewers look at him twice include the fact that the white design of his head bears a resemblance to Finn's hat, both carry bags of some sort, and if we include one of Finn's previous lives, Shoko, their shirts consist of the primary colors of red, blue, and green, the additive light primary colors specifically. Not to mention, Shoko also carried a small pouch with her. Further, people have speculated Shermy might be a cat because of Finn's line in the episode Moral Recoil, "I'm a cat! I'm an agile cat!" And of course, there's the obvious behind-the-scenes evidence that's been staring us in the face the whole time. Shermy seems to be a name crafted out of the voice actor for Finn's name, Jeremy Shada, a fitting tribute for the reincarnation of Finn the human to take on the name of the one who gave him a voice all of these years. But that's not where the connections end with Shermy, or Beth actually. We've brought her up once already, but if we take another look at Shoko's life, there are a few things that become a little curious when you combine them with this whole reincarnation biz. For example, during the series finale, Come Along With Me, Princess Bubblegum sees Finn briefly as Shoko when he asks her to trust him, planting into our minds the fact that Finn has lived these past lives within the context of the episode itself. Not only that, but she focused specifically on his arm. Both Finn and Shoko's prosthetic arms were created by PB as symbols of her friendship and trust. And while Shermy might not have a prosthetic arm or know PB 1,000 plus years later, what is it that causes him to search for the King of Ooh to learn about the adventures of years past? Finn's prosthetic arm. Also, going back to the episode The Vault, Shoko dies in the exact same place that the tree fort would eventually grow from, laying the foundation for a future hero of Ooh to take up her mantle, which eventually became Finn. And this mirrors Beth and Shermy's discoveries too, culminating with them finding the Finn sword in the new tree that sprouted from Fern's remains, which were buried by Finn and Jake. Much like Shoko did for Finn, Finn in turn set the stage for the future heroes of Ooh, laying the groundwork so that they could continue adventuring. It's like poetry, it rhymes. Even Finn's past life as a catalyst comet could be evidence of his reincarnation into Shermy. If the end of the series is interpreted how it has been and Beth and Shermy become the adventurers that Finn and Jake were in the past, they, much like their predecessors, would become huge catalysts for change in the land of future Ooh, just as Finn was during the events of the show, which all cycles back to one of his past lives as a catalyst comet, which by definition are beings that bring about great change in the world. And both Finn and the Lich were embodiments of that change, for better or significantly worse. Lastly, Shermy and Beth live in what appears to be Marceline's house, which is the exact same place Finn and Jake decided to take up residence way back in the season 1 episode Evicted. You know, before they found out it was Marceline's cave. The only hiccup with this idea is that 1,000 plus years after the events of Adventure Time, Marcy should still be alive, right? And I refuse to entertain any response saying she's dead because that's really sad, and Marcy's one of my favorites. Though there are a few other ways you could answer this question. She could be traveling, adventuring, off having her happy ending with PB, or she could just be about to knock down Beth and Shermy's door just like she did with Finn and Jake and tell them to get lost. And the cycle begins anew. So that's what the theory says. Based on this evidence, it looks like it's more than reasonable to assume that Beth and Shermy are in fact reincarnations of Finn and Jake 1,000 plus years into the future. But is there anything else in the show that can help with this idea? If by that you mean one of the show's core themes, then yes, absolutely. Adventure Time was about a lot of things. Like, a lot of things, but one theme the show made sure to make clear was its attitude towards change. Which, to put it one way, is, in a world full of chaos, the natural state of things is change. Everything changes, and yet, it's still the same. This is a theme explored heavily in one of the final episodes of the series, Abstract, wherein Jermaine began painting abstract art as his perception of the landscape changed over time. Even within that episode, there's a scene where Jake talks to Dirt Beer Guy about change, and Dirt Beer Guy is arguably one of the characters who's changed the most since his first appearance. But he's still the same old Dirt Beer Guy as back when he was Root Beer Guy. This idea of remaining the same despite change can be traced back to virtually every element of Adventure Time. From the lyrics of the hauntingly beautiful Everything Stays to the fact that Adventure Time is a rare example of a cartoon that doesn't really have a status quo, especially not in the later seasons. As Jake said in Abstract,
the shapes are always changing. Changing is their normal state, like us. Even if we're not changing on the outside, we're changing on the inside constantly. There's some stuff about me that I've been ignoring for a long time. I'm afraid of that stuff. But it's part of who I am. As long as I know the shape of my soul, I'll be all right.
We already talked about characters like Dirt Beer Guy, but as people have pointed out, Adventure Time grew to have one of the richest worlds imaginable, wherein any character could take the spotlight without it phasing anyone, which is exactly what the show did from time to time. Like Eric Thurm, writing on the show for Polygon, said, quote, "The show without Finn and Jake would definitely be different, but it would still recognizably be Adventure Time." And to back that up, I present to you Exhibit A, one of the aforementioned episodes that doesn't really focus on Finn and Jake at all, and yet, it's still unmistakably Adventure Time. It's different, but yet the same. And this rings true for pretty much every character in the show, not the least of which Finn and Jake. We already talked about Jake coming to terms with his development in Abstract, but even Finn makes reference to it in Gumbaldia, mentioning to Jake that the younger Finn's solution to the impending war would be to hit something or attack someone, or pretty much do anything than try to start peace talks, which is what he and Jake were setting off to do.
This is kind of backwards, right?
How so?
I used to be all about violence. Now it's like, I'm different.
You're a beautiful flower and I love to watch you grow.
Finn's shaky relationship with Fern has also demonstrated just how much Finn has changed over the course of the series. We see it as the measured, composed, and constantly traumatized Finn tries to accommodate the more impulsive and action-driven Fern, a duplicate of Finn born from his past self that retains his memories. Although I will concede that there was a grass demon that had a hand in creating and maintaining Fern, so that might taint the comparison a bit. Even so, Finn, Fern, Simon, Dirt Beer Guy, Jake, all of these are perfect examples of characters who underwent massive change and yet remain the same characters that we've come to know over the years. It's kind of like cells. As the cells in our bodies have all died out one by one and been replaced, we've all become ships of Theseus wandering the earth. Physically, we inhabit almost a completely different body than one we previously had, save for things like cells in the cerebral cortex. But even so, are you the same person as you were 7 years ago? 10 years ago? I think we know what Adventure Time would say in this case, but whether you think the answer is yes or no, you can't deny that you were probably different back then. And after all, what are Beth and Shermy but Finn and Jake removed from their original bodies? They're different yet the same. Everything stays, but it still changes, ever so slightly. Oh, and real quick, speaking of cells, a little while ago we put up a video over on our anime channel, Getting the Robot, about cells at work and just how accurate its presentation of the human body is. You should go check it out after you're done this video. But considering everything we just talked about, one question makes itself apparent. If Shermy and Beth are indeed the reincarnations of Finn and Jake, destined to be the next big adventurers of OO, why would they only make themselves apparent 1,000 plus years after the lives of Finn and Jake? Now, we can't really know how long Jake lived because he's a shapeshifter, but Finn's a human, short of magic or some experiment of PBs, which are both pretty likely now that I've said that out loud. Finn probably died hundreds of years before the framing device of Come Along With Me. I'd say that this is further proven by BMO not remembering Finn's name when asked about him.
He belonged to my best friend, Fred.
Fred!
No, not Fred. His name was Phil.
So why would the supposed reincarnations of Finn and Jake not show up until now to continue their story? Maybe the two reincarnations never found each other before they were Beth and Shermy. Maybe no one ever talked to BMO in that time, although BMO is like the most charismatic AI ever. I don't care that they say the King of OO is a myth. You think that Beth and Shermy are the first people BMO's talked to in the last 1,000 years? Dude made friends with a bubble. But there's one answer that fits a bit better with traditional beliefs about reincarnation. Though we are going to talk about Hinduism right now, and I should let you you know up front that I don't practice any religion, so I encourage you to look more into this yourself if it's something that interests you. Many cultures believe that reincarnation actually takes a great deal of time as opposed to being rather instant. And in Hindu cultures, many believe that in a very abridged form, when someone dies, their soul is either reborn into a new being on Earth or is reborn into a temporary heaven or hell for a new life, with this eventuality being decided upon by the karma that was accumulated in the recently ended life. And after this new life has begun and ended, the cycle will begin new until the soul is able to find moksha, self-realization, self-knowledge, freedom from ignorance, and freedom from the cycle of death and rebirth. All that to say, based on certain historical beliefs, reincarnation has no set timeline, which would explain why Beth and Shermy took so long to be reincarnated from Finn and Jake. They may have just led exceptionally long lives in the impermanent afterlife before returning to Earth. But lastly, real quick, let's just talk about Beth for a minute. Sorry, Beth the Pup Princess. Yeah, there's a pup kingdom now. More and more reasons to want a spin-off sequel series. Based on Beth's physical appearance, people have suggested that she's just a descendant of Jake's rather than a full reincarnation, which makes sense. Just look at her. It's unmistakable that she's a descendant of Jake and Lady, sporting the features of both like the rest of their children. However, while there is significantly less evidence for Beth being a reincarnation since we don't have any of Jake's past lives to draw from, the possibility is still there, though it is a slightly less convincing argument. Besides, I don't think there's anything in Adventure Time that says a soul can't be reborn as a member of the same family down the line. By the time Beth and Shermy are around, Finn and Jake seem mostly forgotten anyway if their crumbled statues in the episode's opening is anything to go by. I sure as hell don't know who my relatives were 1,000 years ago. When does family stop being family? How far back would you have to go? Is someone still family if everybody's forgotten them? I need to stop. I was stuck in a citywide power outage last week, so I had a lot of time alone with my thoughts, so I've reached my yearly quota for spiraling, and I still don't have any access to the internet, so pray for me. So not only is there a whole bunch of evidence suggesting that Beth and Shermy are reincarnations of Finn and Jake, but it also fits thematically with one of the overarching themes of the show. And while the show did leave this question ambiguous, I'm personally inclined to take this reincarnation theory to be as close to canon as it can possibly be without it being officially confirmed. With all that in mind, on the plausibility meter, I'm gonna have to rate the conspiracy of Beth and Shermy being reincarnations of Finn and Jake a good 4.5 Finn swords out of 5. But what do you think? Do you think the adventure continuing through Beth and Shermy means that Finn and Jake's spirits are still within them, either metaphorically or literally? What are your thoughts on the Adventure Time finale? And what is your favorite ever episode of the show? It's a tough one for me, but Simon and Marcy always did hold a special place in my heart. Once again, I'm Jacob with Channel Frederator, and never forget, Frederator loves you.